on the December 2025 What's Neat.
And this month we do layout construction. The What's Neat show is sponsored by Lombard Hobbies, your value hobby shop for over 40 years of modelers helping modelers. Big inventory, value pricing, fast shipping, and great service. And by Boradway Limited Imports, the cutting-edge leader in model trains. Check out their website at broadway-limited.com. And by Bachmann Trains. Now that's the way to run a railroad. Check out their website at bachmanntrains.com. And thank you for helping us support the best hobby in the world. This is What's Neat for December 2025. I'm your host, Ken Patterson. And this month we've got a great show in that we do layout construction. Yes, it's layout building season, and it's no different on this show, whereas we continue to build a lot of new things on the layout down here that I've been working on. And this month we build a 12-foot section across my window. Just an absolutely beautiful diorama that we're going to get a lot of great use out of in the future. Also, I want to share with you something amazing I got from Boradway Limited Imports. This is an SD45 locomotive in HO scale with Paragon 4 sound in it. And I took it out yesterday and did a photo shoot with this thing. And it looks absolutely beautiful in sunlight. Louisville in Indiana, number 3002. This is a short line railroad. I believe they had about 109 miles of track, but just an absolutely beautiful model from Boradway Limited. Check it out on their website at broadwaylimited.com. Also this month, we are going to look at something really special. We are going to get to see the brand new Acela II that Bachmann Industries in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is now producing. We take the model, we put it together, we check it all out, we put it through its paces, and in fact we put decoders in it, electronics, current keepers, and just really otherwise enjoy this gorgeous model that's also fully lit for nighttime operation. So with that, be sure to check out the What's Neat This Week video show that we shoot down here every Saturday night, keeping you updated on what's new in this, the best hobby in the world. So with that, let's continue on with the rest of this December 2025 What's Neat. For this segment of What's Neat, I've got something neat. I got a fresh box here from Philadelphia. And what is inside this box is the next generation of Acela train sets. If you'll remember, about 25 years ago, Bachmann Industries introduced the first Acela. And I was privileged to be part of that deal, in that I did all of the art, the photography art for that model. And I built a lot of catenary, spent a great deal of time making catenary. And it ended up being an article in Rail Model Journal, and the photography was amazing. In fact, it ran on the cover of the WHATS catalog at the time. So now what we have is the next gen train set. And the way this comes, it comes packaged as a train set, which is perfect. You've got the power car, actually 2 power cars. I believe one of them is powered. And this thing comes with some easy track and a transformer and 3 cars to make a nice little train set. But if you want to model the whole consist, you need the add-on cars that Bachmann offers. And I've got one of them here. And they don't have couplers like we're used to. They all connect together, similar to a TGV. And the additional cars to make the complete consist are these 6 cars. So 6 cars, 9 cars, and 2 power units is what we have to make the consist. Now, I have not read anything about this. In fact, you just saw me open the box. But I do in fact know that these come DCC ready. And so I've got some Digitrax decoders, non-sound decoders. One's a 21 pin, one's I believe the old 8 pin. So we'll see what kind of decoder will fit inside of this locomotive, because I really want to see this run. But the fact is how wonderful it is. There's an article I noticed in the November issue of Trains magazine that talks about the first 2 sets of 28 sets that they're going to produce. If you'll remember, the original Acelas were 20 sets, of which I believe 16 of them are still currently running, and they're using the last 4 for parts. So look forward to seeing this run now. I'm going to put a decoder in it, figure that out. I'll show you how to do that briefly. And let's see this beautiful train run on the layout. The front end profile of this Acela model is absolutely stunning. So I've got the power unit right here in front of us, and I took 5 screws out from underneath, which enabled me to simply pop the top off. And looky, inside we find a speaker. So that means you could put a sound decoder in this and probably maybe use a TGV sound or whatever sound's available for high-speed trains. There's a lot of weights in here. This unit is very heavy. And right here, I pull this off, and that's where I'll plug in the 21 pin decoder to power this up. Now I've got a non-sound decoder and I'm okay with that. But it would be fun to put a sound decoder in this. Upon looking at the passenger cars that come with the set, I've got 2 of them right here. And what I want to show you is how these go together. Pretty ingenious. It simply plugs in underneath. Okay, hold on, let me get this right. And then you just push it together just like that. And you got a diaphragm between the coaches. So just like that. So what I'm going to do, the instructions come with a consist page on showing how all of the cars are supposed to be arranged in the consist. I'm curious to know if it's lit. I hope it is. And I'm going to put the decoder in that, put the 5 screws back into it, and let's see if we can get this thing to run for us. I am now connecting the consist of cars together. I'm following the diagram that Bachmann supplies, and each car has got its own number on it. So I'm going through the black boxes and pulling out each car as per the consist instruction sheet. I am pushing the cars together. They connect together very easily, and there's a rubber diaphragm that you put underneath the car. It's like part of the coupling mechanism. And what this does is this prevents the cars, after they're coupled together and powered up, from coming apart. And you simply put this in the center underneath, hold on, and match up the holes, and she snaps right into place. And now when the cars won't pull apart. That's what holds everything good and tight. So let me continue putting these cars together, and let's just see how this beautiful consist turns out. I want to show you in detail how I've decided to go about putting the decoders and the electronics into these Acela units right here. I've got both units taken apart, the powered unit and the dummy unit. And let me show you what my thoughts are on this. Presently, I've got the Digitrax DH166 non-sound decoder in the lead unit right here. And I've got a Soundtrax current keeper connected to that. So in the event when I'm running this very, very slow on the layout at night with no sound, I can just enjoy the lights while I'm working, and it won't stall on the very few turnouts that I do have that have dead frogs in them. Not that that's really an issue, because lately I've been going through the layout and doing that, but let's just put a current keeper in here. Now this is a unit with a speaker in it. Okay? At some point down the road, I'm going to put a Tsunami electric decoder in this that'll give me the electric sounds of electric locomotives. In fact, I went to Mark Twain Hobby last night and picked up just such a decoder. This is the TSU 21 PNEM8 sound decoder for tracks for electric models. So it's got the sounds of the electric motors humming and lots of bells and whistles and different choices, but there's probably only one horn for the Acela lately. I've heard that on YouTube. It's very interesting. So I'm going to put this sound decoder inside of the dummy unit. And I've got an array of speakers here from various projects. I'm going to take one of these speakers and put it inside the unit. And I've studied the board on the Bachmann unit intimately, and I understand by looking at the wired up model with a speaker on it that they soldered a speaker to S1 and S2, the metal tabs here. So I'll solder a wire to each one of those and run a wire to the speaker, put it in the rear unit. So the rear unit will have sound and the operational ability of all the lights. And then at some point down the road, I'll get another sound decoder and put it in the lead unit. So I'll have sound in both ends of the train as it runs down the layout. I think this is going to be a neat thing. So let me put these models back together. In fact, I can just pull this one out right now and put the sound decoder in this unit just as easy as can be. And that's it. That's all you got to do for installing the decoder, and then I'll wire up a speaker to it. And I'll put these two tops back on. Incidentally, I want to show you while I've got this open, there's 4 body posts, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 screws, each screws under the trucks, and then 1 small screw that holds the nose in place. It's a very well engineered, quite simply engineered model. I'm very impressed now that I've been messing around with this thing for about 3 days and I'm getting to know it intimately. It's very, very nice. So let's get this running. Let's get this together, get a speaker put in there. One last thing about the electronic install. I'm going to show you something right here. I bought a second current keeper when I was at Mark Twain the other day. And that's this white one right here that you see on the model. I've got it stuck in the model with some double stick tape. And that's called a current keeper 2. It's the same arrangement as the purple one you saw earlier. It's just these are stacked up in a different arrangement. Also, in order to connect the current keeper, obviously there's no plug I mentioned on this decoder because it's from 2020. It's before they were putting plugs on them for current keepers. Well, I checked the Soundtrax website and George made a video, and I've got the clip on the computer screen right here, where they explain that on the motherboard of the locomotive, if you solder the current keeper's blue wire to number 16 post and the black wire to the number 20 post, that you're able to hook up a current keeper to the motherboard, and then I'll plug in the Tsunami decoder, and that'll ensure that this dummy unit, being as lightweight as it is, if it loses any current or track current at all, the sound won't drop out. It'll continue to make it sound like it's supposed to. So it's just a little quick additional thing I did to this. So we've got sound presently in the dummy rear unit. We've got the Digitrax decoder in the front unit, and at some point I will add a Soundtrax decoder to that. But for the purpose of this video now, let me close up these models and let's get this thing on the track and get it running. Let me share with you what's neat this week. I've got this beautiful Acela set up here, and all the lights are just absolutely beautiful on this thing. Everything's working. I've got the sound decoder in this, And let's watch this thing run. It's smooth as can be. It's got full lighting in all of the cars. Just really a nice train. So my plan is now I'm going to shoot 2 run-bys for you. This thing will run around my layout at full speed. I want to shoot a run-by like that so you can see how this thing looks running at its fastest. Also, I want to shoot a nighttime run-by to share with you how beautiful all of the lights are as this Acela passes by the camera. So with that, let's continue with those 2 run-bys and just see how cool this train really looks. For this segment of What's Neat, I'm going to build a new section 12 foot long to replace this piece that goes in front of the window. Now this will be my 3rd time doing this since this layout was built around 2007 when I really went crazy and started getting this thing done. Previous modules that were in this place was only about 12 inches wide and it ran the full 12-foot length past the window, and when I took that one out, I used it for the outdoor run-bys that I've been creating for the What's Neat show for the past 10 or 15 years. It just worked great. I kept it in the garage and it was just perfect standard mainline trackage. Around 2003 for What's Neat shows, you saw me build the narrow gauge 3-rail track through this area, the dual gauge track and all the turnouts, because I had Blackstone as an account and I read about the history of narrow gauge and really got into it. It was a wonderful experience for me to learn the history and enjoy 15-mile-an-hour running at its best. But now I want to convert this back to straight standard gauge trackage, all of it. At one point, there was a turntable right here over the spray booth that I'm standing in front of right here. And I did cut that section off and narrowed this down somewhat so I'd have more room for doing the podcast. Now I want to take this down, I think close to 12 inches again, and I want the scenery to come downhill. And I want it to just flow with the trackage. I want the trackage to come off of Kimmswick and gently, smoothly flow into the room. Now I'm going to use a French curve made of a piece of plywood in order to draw the radius that I want, but I want the gradual curveness of the trackage. Once I get that done, I'll figure out if I can have a siding or additional buildings at that point. My main goal at this point is to get the main line running through it with a nice smooth arc radius curve tying up with the end of the module. So follow along as we see what happens next. Another layout construction segment on What's Neat. All right, I'm ready to pull this module from out of the window, which is a really good thing in my design that I can take this over into the shop and work on it. Now I'm going to take this Sharpie, and what I'm going to do is make the new module, the new piece of foam that goes in here, contour out to the existing diorama right next to it. What easier way than to trace it here. And then I want it to come out as far as probably right with this diorama right here. So right here is where it's going to come out. I'm going to put a square on that to make sure that's all just right up and down through there. So this is where the module is going to get cut. And I'll cut it on back to a point about right here. So let's get this in the shop. Let's tear off the top sheet of foam, get all the block wires and everything out of it, glue a new sheet of foam on top to the right size, and get this back in the window. Then I can lay the main line to that nice, long, gentle sweeping curve that I want to have. Upon doing that, I'll know where I can put a siding if I want to do so. This area of the layout, I will tell you, being right here central to where I am most of the time, is used to put trains on the track, take them off the track from the shelves behind me, and a lot of testing happens right here. So the module's not going to be designed from a standpoint of operation or aesthetic scenery as much as it is its function. Before I pull the module away from the window, I want to know where I'm going to cut the outside edge of it and what I'm going to cut off. And so what I've done is I've measured from where the module ends right here, and I've also measured from where my metal studs are that create the base for this section of layout, where the edge of that is. So I drew a straight line to correlate with the straight edge of the steel stud, and I drew another straight line off of that module. And what I did was I put a yardstick here, a metal yardstick, and I bent it so that it would line up to each side of the straight line and form a curve. And then I took a black magic marker and I ran the marker along the edge of this piece of yardstick material. And what that'll do is let me know where I want to cut this so that it'll have its new shape before I lay the new piece of foam on top. Important to do that. So now, being as this is designed to simply come up, I'm going to do just that and take it over into the shop and start working on this. And this is 2 layers of foam, and it's very light. And I've got a cart set up in the room so I can simply wheel it into the shop, just as you've seen me do before. Every desk, the spray booth, everything down here's got wheels on it, so everything can always be moved around in the event that I need to do something just like this. So off to the shop we go. We're going to lay a new sheet of foam on top of this and then get it back into the window area. What a blessing it is to be able to bring the diorama into the shop. I can work on it all the way around. All right, so what I've done is I've simply peeled off the fascia that was stapled into the wood, just like you've seen me build this. In fact, I built this diorama on a What's Neat show. I also pulled out the control panels, which I can reuse the switches. I haven't torn this portion out yet, but I'm going to do that. The top layer of foam is going to go, but before I trim it down, I want to shape the module first so that the bottom layer will have the shape of what I want based on this line that I showed you that I drew and I ran the yardstick around. So I'm going to grab a saw that I know will cut through all 4 inches of foam and allow me to do a bit of a curve, and that'll be this electric battery-powered saw. And once I get this shaped, then I'm going to go check and see if I've got a new sheet of foam in the garage and literally just tear off this top layer of foam, put another piece on, and then I'll probably trace it so it'll match the contours of the way I'm cutting it right now. So that should make it so I can get it back into the window over there and then lay the track that's going to follow this arc that you can see painted with darker paint right here, which will give a nice smooth curve instead of the sharp abrupt curve I've got with the dual gauge track, which at the time didn't seem that abrupt because the narrow gauge stuff was small And it didn't affect the standard gauge HO scale stuff at all. But seeing some of the larger locomotives, passenger trains that have been coming out, the big boys and such, I want to have a nice smooth. I'm really working as I build and work on this layout, this season of model railroading is what I'm calling it. I really want good track work. I'm going to make sure I do the best I can with regards to smooth curves, nice level track, all code 83. I'm getting rid of a lot of the code 70 just to have reliable track work. Before I start cutting, I do want to mention that I did pull up the rails, so I won't be cutting through the metal work of the track, which, you know, the saw would still cut it, but why go through that? Just like that, we've got a beautifully new shaped diorama here. So upon taking the crowbar and starting to pry this apart, let's think back to last year when I built the new module and I showed you how I took part of it apart and was separating things. This isn't going to come apart at all. It's glued with the orange, great stuff, Foam Pro glue. And so I think it's best to just go get 2 sheets of foam, fresh foam, trace this onto the foam, and let's just start out fresh. All new foam, all new everything sides. That way we don't have to worry about salvaging something that's gonna end up not being salvageable. Okay, so we're completely scrapping this diorama. Again, in order to pry those 2 sections of foam apart, it would be an impossibility. I would end up destroying it. It'll come apart in pieces. So let's just write it off. I ran to the Home Depot last night and I grabbed 2 more sheets of foam because that's what it's going to take to do the 11-foot, 5-inch section across the window. And I cut the first sheet of foam already, and I like to use a jigsaw to cut the foam, because it's a very simple way to do it instead of a handsaw. And with the battery-powered saw, I don't have to worry about a cord. So anyway, I picked up 2 sheets of foam, $54 a sheet. I know that's crazy. I want to show you the base at this point. Let me get this camera in position here so I can do that. Now the base in this area was built in 2007 when I built this section across the window. Previous to that, it was simply a 1x4, 15 inches lower with 1 track on it. So this section is made of 1/4-inch plywood wrapped around metal studs. Same way I build a lot of the bench work, because the metal studs, there's only 2 braces on this 11-foot section. It does not warp across the window, and it will never warp because of the metal studs that are built as a box inside of this wood. It also gives me an open space inside here, a hollow space, so I can run LocoNet wires through there or any other wires for lighting, just anything that I want to have pass through. I've also got puck lights underneath this section of wood. Okay, so that's the open space allows for wiring. This section is completely removable. In fact, I had to have it taken out. I'll show you a video clip of me removing it from the room when I had this large window replaced. A storm broke the old 12-foot window, or 11-foot window, and I had a new window put in. So this whole section was able to come out beautifully. Another thing about this I want to point out is it's got edges on it. See how the edge on both sides comes up? Originally, there was a 12-inch wide module in here, 2 layers of foam thick, and a simple mainline track running across the window on top of the foam. Now I want to talk about this edge one more time. I'm making the module wider for this segment across the window, but it's not going to be wide enough to hit the blinds. So I've got about 14 and a half inches, 14 and 3/4 inches. And I've already cut a piece of foam to fit that length or width. And I'm going to put it in place right here, right now. This foam has been cut so that a piece of plywood, the outside plywood, will wrap and fit into the groove, fit right between that. See that? And also, I took the battery-powered Milwaukee router. I put a 1/4-inch bit on it, and I ran it across the piece of foam with a straight edge, measuring the distance of where the lip is on the back here of this module. And what that groove does, I'm going to lift up this foam and show it to you in place. That groove that I routed out fits perfectly with the ledge, the edge of the plywood sticking up right there. And what that does is it makes it so that when you got two sheets of foam in the track laid and everything's in place and connected, if somebody comes along and bumps it, it's not going to move. It's in a solid groove, so it's not going to slide sideways. It's not velcroed down, it's just sitting here by its own weight, and it works beautifully. I've never had an incident with that. And the added width allowed me to put at one point a train station back here, and I had 3 tracks, 1, 2, 3. Now for this video with the new section, I need to continue cutting the foam, and we're going to do that and lay it in place to match the end of that diorama, match the topography coming off of that diorama. And then the track is going to curve. Like I said, I want a very gentle curve all the way across. We're going to build this to the point of getting that track laid, and then I'm going to stand back and look at it and decide if I want sidings, where I can put them. I just want to stand back and look at it and see how I can utilize the rest of the real estate. So at this point, it's time to cut some more foam, get this thing into place, get the foam glued together, and I'm also going to glue the whole thing together with the Foam Pro, the great stuff, Foam Pro stuff, right here in this space. Because in my shop, I do not have a tabletop that it's 11 feet 5 inches long. I can make one. I don't want to. I want to get through this quickly. So I'm simply going to glue it in place and put the weights down on it right here. It will hold the weight just fine. So let's continue on. I know there's a lot of explaining to do, but there was a reason behind a lot of the things that I did when I originally designed this, and I've never shown this on video before, so I thought I'd point out the groove and just all the different things that went into the thought pattern, the area to run wires, all that into this shelf, simple shelf that crosses the window. So that's how the base was built. Let's get on and build some more foam work and get this thing in place. So I'm drawing out the last piece of the puzzle that's going to be about 41.5 inches long. And if you can believe it, I've gotten this whole segment, all of it, out of one sheet of foam. And the only thing I'm going to have left over is this little scrap piece right here in the middle. That I didn't see coming, but that's good, because there's other projects on this layout where that foam is going to be used. So I'm going to cut this last piece and test fit everything over there into place. Okay, I've got our 2 layers of foam in place, test fit onto the 12-inch shelf here in the window. I've made space for the plywood end that's going to go on this piece. Everything's fitting nice. The foam is sitting in the cradle. As you'll remember, I told you the ledges hold it inside so it doesn't slide. And I've also routed out the groove. We'll eventually put woodwork all the way across this. It'll be really nice. The track is not matching up on this end, and it didn't match up when I built the original module. And I cheated. I took a file and I filed the foam a little bit so it would match. And what I had was a hump and turnouts, and it was kind of not very good track work. So to approach this, and the reason for this is every time you buy foam over the years, I know it says 2-inch, but no, it's not. Every piece of foam is a little bit different in thickness depending upon what year you buy it, or even what month it's made. But the fact is, that's my problem here. It doesn't match up. So what I'm going to do is go underneath. I've got shims and what have you that I can work with and adjust the bench work itself to make up for this about 1/8 of an inch difference. Once that's done, then I'm going to go ahead and lay some track and see what the arc is. And that's where I'm going to end it. I'm not going to put the sides on yet. I'm not going to put blocks on yet. I just want to see the track in place and then see what I can imagine that I might want to do next with regards to sidings. But one thing I have thought about in the last couple of hours of doing this is coming off of the Kimswick diorama here, I've got a nice straight section right there. I may just put a number 10 turnout there and then come on to this new diorama with 2 tracks, which would initiate the siding, of which then I can conclude on the other end of the diorama with a number 6 or number 8 turnout. So let's see what happens next. a little adjusting and some track down. The beautiful thing about microengineering track is it holds its shape. So you'll remember that arc that I drew with a piece of plywood creating that French curve. Well, I've still got that shape in the track right here. So all I got to do is just lay it in place, and it's going to put me within at least a half an inch of where I want this curve to be. So let's just see what happens next. Okay, I'm ready to glue everything into place here. I've taken the top layer off as I had my test fitting, but there's an issue with this piece of foam, and I want everything to be built right this time. So let me show you something quick, and I'll show you how we're going to fix it. This piece of foam, all foam has issues, I'll tell you that. And as you see here, this piece is rocking back and forth on the surface. I don't want that. Obviously it's warped. It's got a bow in it. So what I want to do is I'm going to take this piece of foam, I'm going to run it through the bandsaw so I get a very thin, constant, accurate cut. Probably right through here, straight through. Upon running it through the bandsaw, I'll lay both pieces back in place. I'll stack all the pieces of foam where they belong, and then we're going to put the top layer, the first layer of glue to glue the sections together with the Great Stuff Foam Pro orange glue. So anyway, let me get that cut on the saw. I've already shown you B-roll of me cutting it. And let's get this thing glued together and see what the track work is going to start to lay out and look like. Okay, now it's time to glue this together. And I know this tube is going to run out. I've got another one ready to go. I want to get the first 8 feet. And I'm not going to need a lot of material here. I always use too much. That's why I couldn't get the other foam apart, the module. There's no reason to use that much. So this is going to make it to this tube right here. I'm fine. That's about 8 feet. So let's put the first half on it. Then we're going to clamp it and weight it to prevent any foam expansion from changing our dimensions vertically. You know what? I'm going to glue it all down right now. And we've got enough glue. Okay. All right, this is feeling good, looking good. And our piece of wood fits in perfectly. I've got spacers here on the front, little pieces of wood here. And I ensure that I've got the space for the plywood. I'm really only concerned with the absolute front of it being perfect. The back of it, you're not going to really see. And I can make any adjustments and trimming if I need to, but if I did it right, I won't have to. All right, now we're going to weight this and clamp this. In order to get an even amount of weight distribution, I figured it would be best to use this level. This is 8 feet. And hopefully the clamps are long enough to do this. If not, I'll just put weights on this. Look at that, perfect. I'm going to put clamps on the back. I've got space. Just keep everything from expanding. How about a clamp right here at this joint? Fast forward through this part. But I want you to see in real time how this goes. This is going to look fantastic. I've got another level. I want even distribution of the weight on the end here. We'll lay it on its side. And put 20 pounds of weight upon the top of this. And this will keep that from expanding. And I think that's going to do it. What we do now is just, I can go grab a couple more clamps. I'm going to put another clamp here, 2 more clamps on the back, and just let this set up now. It generally takes 30 minutes for this material to set up and cure. I'm going to let it go for 1 hour. And then we're going to probably have to paint this module to seal it. But I really can't wait to see the ends match up too. That's going to be the next step as well. So hang tight. Everything's looking good here. Okay, I've pulled all of the clamps off of our module that is now glued together. And I'm going to paint this to seal it with some brown latex house paint or whatever color I've got. But I'm just temporarily getting an eyeball on some of these ideas that I've got for adding a siding track to this. And I've got the microengineering track, which was already pre-bent into shape. I simply laid it back on top of the foam. Now here's where I'm running into a problem, and this goes to the old layouts design. And I'm going to change something on this layout, on this module. If you'll look into this bridge scene right here, this bridge has got a slight curve built into it. The prototype didn't, but this model did. Because of the module that was here previously, the track was closer to the window. I've always had a problem on this section of the layout in that expansion has caused one of the rails to kind of pop out, and I've spiked it back in place and I've gapped it and I've put a rail joiner on it. I'd rather just replace it. Plus there's another thing about this module. This track is code 83. The track on the bridge is code 70. And then as we come back into the new module, it's going back to 83. So what I believe I'm going to do, and oh, by the way, I did adjust the bottom underneath here. I have adjustment screws where I lifted up, made a space, and I've got the rail height matching perfectly on this module. As you'll recall, before it didn't. But what I think I'm going to do, I would very much like this main line here off of this module coming straight off of that curve into this module, which will move it over about 3/4 of an inch. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that 3/4 of an inch is going to give me all I need when I line up this track. And then as I turn the camera around, you'll see the mainline line is going to line up pretty darn nice. And then I'll be able to put a siding track on the back side of the main line simply to hold a train. I'm probably going to put another turnout and another track here on the front, have it stub and dead end. So I've got a place to put trains on the track, test them, and what have you without interrupting the main line. So far, the curve off of this module is just beautiful. I love the way that looks. It's going to be really gentle as the trains come into the scene, and that's the whole point of rebuilding this module. So now that I've got the track kind of laid out the way I think I'm going to lay it, I am going to go ahead and rip up about 4 feet of track, and I'm going to straighten this bridge out, which might mean moving this pier over a little bit and moving obviously the abutment over too. Not a big deal. It's foam. We can do anything in foam, right? So let me tear into that. That should not take very long. And then we'll have code 83 all the way throughout the way it should be. It doesn't matter what kind of paint you use. We're just putting something on to seal the foam so it doesn't have air, so it doesn't degrade and get all soft. I'm squaring up the sides of the foam diorama before I paint it. I'm using just a simple metal iron square here. And what I've done is I've taken 80 grit sandpaper and I've taped it or stuck it to the flat surface of this angle. And you can get this at the Home Depot back in the rental department. They sell sheets of this. This is 60 grit paper right here, and cut it to the size, and you can actually use wood and make yourself a square. So when you do these dioramas like this, if you build them this way, you can square up the sides before you put the plywood sides onto the foam. It just makes for a better, more professional look. So before I seal the sides with paint, I've decided to go ahead and router out a groove all the way around this diorama. And as you've seen me do in the past, I like to take this half-inch router, and I've got it set up for a fence where it's right in the middle, right up the middle of the foam. It's about a 1/2 of an inch deep, so that'll fit these small blocks of wood that I will cut. I'll then put them in the groove, and when they sink in the groove, I'll glue them in with Gorilla Glue, and that's the surface that I use to apply the plywood sides. Because with a nice piece of wood embedded in the foam, it ensures that when I staple the plywood in place, it's not going to pull out easily unless I use a crowbar, which it'll then come out. And the reason for that is this. This is 12 feet long, almost 11 feet 5 inches long, and it will flex. When I move it, it's flexing. And the last thing you want to do is put your track on top and then start moving it around back into the shop to put wooden sides on it and have your track it all messed up. It will not, it's bad. Trust me, it's bad. So what I'm going to do is router again all the way around. And then on the back side that faces the window, I'm going to go ahead and put a strip of plywood for the entire length and staple it in place. That'll ensure that this diorama doesn't flex. I then can go back, and when I know what my contours and topography is going to be on the front side, I'll already have my groove in place to put the blocks of wood and then cut a piece of plywood for the front. But the good thing is, if I start moving it, at least there's a piece of plywood on the back to keep it from flexing, because I do want to get the track glued down onto this probably before I put the front side onto it, the finished wood onto it. So that's my explanation for that. And now I'm just going to make a mess. one little block of wood at a time. I'm going to put them in groups and mark on the foam where I put the blocks, because I don't really need to run a straight line of blocks, if that makes any sense. In other words, I've got blocks here, so I'll put arrows where these blocks are on top, and then I'll know where to staple the plywood on. So I'm going to do this and let this set up overnight, and then the next work session, after this sets up, I'll make it smooth. We'll put the plywood sides on and get this back over into the window area. So overnight I put blocks of wood all the way around on both sides of the diorama. I also peeled off the plywood on the back side of the diorama that we took out of the window, which I am going to be able to use on the back side of this. This is the side that will be towards the window, so the side's not going to show in the room, but when this is finished with a clear coat of polyurethane, it's going to look absolutely beautiful. I've also got an additional piece of wood because this piece is 8 feet long. I'm going to need another piece to make it the other 4 feet, close to 4 feet, 8 to 12. Alright, so I'm going to seal the rest of this on both sides, let it dry, and then I'm going to staple on this wood onto the straight back side of the diorama. I am not going to put plywood on the front diorama yet until I know exactly what type of topography that I'm going to have, matching up to the Kimswick module into this diorama and on the other end of the diorama. Plus I also anticipate, as the main line runs through, I'm going to fall off the main line with a shoulder of ballast and have any other trackage be just a little bit lower to create a really cool effect. It looks great that way when secondary main lines are lower than the main line. And you can do that with foam. That's what I love about foam. So let me get this sealed, let me get these sides on, and let's get this thing back in the window so we can start laying out where the track's going to go. I'm going to use the great stuff to help attach this. Just a little bead of this. My table, I checked for levelness. The table is completely level, which it needs to be. Because once this is stapled, whatever the shape of your table is the shape that your diorama is going to be. And again, the whole point of putting this wood on here, it aesthetically looks nice, but it keeps the dioramas from flexing. It keeps them from breaking. Just like this. Now if you want, you can go over these nail heads and cover them up with wood putty. But this works beautifully. And I'm hitting the areas where I know there's blocks of wood in the foam. I've marked the foam on top with a Sharpie so I can see. And then what I will do is I've got just one more piece of wood to add to this, and I'll measure that out about 2.5 feet. So one small piece of wood and we can put this over in the window now. Check it out. The plywood on the backside is smooth and it looks absolutely beautiful. It's all stained at this point. I thought I'd go ahead and finish the backside. And another thing, if you'll remember, now that we've got plywood on one side of this, remember earlier in the video, I showed you how much this diorama flexed. There's no flex in this now. The plywood, even on just one side, is holding the foam firm from flexing, which is what I wanted to ensure, because I probably will, once I get the track laid on this, bring it back into the shop to do all the final scenery and ballasting on it. Okay, so here's what I've got. I'm starting to experiment with laying out some trackage here. The module fits absolutely perfect in its spot now. What I've got going on is I think I'm going to put a number 8 turnout that I salvaged off of an old diorama, and I'm going to put it right on this Kimmswick module. That's Kimmswick, Missouri is where this is located. In fact, there's the prototype bridge, and there's the model. So, unlike the prototype, which did not have a turnout here, I'm going to modify this and put that turnout in right here, which will allow me to have 2 tracks flowing gently, curving into the diorama. I also have another turnout here that I may use to put a siding, an additional third, or I would call it a second siding, one on either side of the main line, and then I've got a stub siding also. Now you've got to ask yourself, before I tore this track out of here, this track had a curve to it on this module before it went into the new module that we're building. This turnout obviously is not curved. So what I'm going to do is, after the frog, I'm going to take a Dremel and I'm going to notch out the spacers between all the ties. And once I move those spacers out, I'll be able to curve the 4 inches of that turnout gently, so it'll ease into the new module. And because this turnout here is in a curve, I may do the same thing to that turnout, where I can gently bend the turnout ever so slightly to create the same curve effect without affecting the points. I know it'll work. Experiment. Coming down on the other side of the module, I tore out the bridge, and I'm going to rebuild that and make it straight. I've also torn out all the track up to where the expansion problem was. And so I'll lay the Code 83 track here into place. Incidentally, I've got foam rubber roadbed underneath this, something from many, many years ago, but it's still fresh and it's soft. Where the ties go across the wooden trestle portion of the bridge, it's a ballasted deck. Where they go across the girders, I'm going to go ahead and tear off these ties and lay the rails, spike them directly onto the wooden decking of the girder bridge. The bridge will be straightened out so that it'll match up, and everything's going to flow right through the seam. I've got another very long turnout here. I believe that's a number 10 turnout, which is going to take me off to the siding closest to the main line coming into the room. And then the 4th track that you see here is a stub siding, where it's simply going to end. I did, as you saw, I cut the wood. I grooved it out and put the wood in here to attach our wooden sides to the diorama. The more I look at this scene here, if I'm going to match it up topography-wise, I'm going to have to dig that wood back out right here. I would call that a mistake. As I contour the diorama upwards like this. That'll give me a shoulder on this side of the track. I'll use fake fir and nice grassy area here, and just the outside edge of this road can be modeled as it comes off. But this whole layer here is going to have to be carved down, so I'll have to dig out the wood there, because the actual outside plywood would then come down and follow the contour of the foam. So with that said, I still have a lot of work ahead of me. Ballasting, gluing down the track, putting in blocks, putting on the fascia, putting in the block facial panels, building out the bridge on the end. And there's so many other projects on various parts of this layout that I'm working on for this upcoming year of 2026. So what I want to say is, for now, we're going to end this segment of What's Neat. A lot more working coming up here in January when we continue this project, and we still have to work on the projects that we started last year, whereas We built that section over the washer dryer. We've got to build that train station over there. We've got to put in lights for the train station, all the siding trackages, all the, the walkways and what have you. A lot of work coming up here for this year of 2026. So look forward to that. And so with that, I do want to say I wish you and yours a very happy holiday season. 'Tis the season, and we will see you in 2026 on the next What's Neat show. So with that, Ken Patterson signing out for this year of 2025. Happy holidays, y'all. This is the best hobby in the world. All of the products seen on this episode of What's Neat are available from Lombard Hobbies in Lombard, Illinois, or order online at lombardhobby.com. Boradway Limited Imports, the cutting-edge leader in model trains. Check out their website at broadway-limited.com. Bachmann Trains. Now that's the way to run a railroad. Check out their website at bachmanntrains.com.